Yeah, thank you very much, Peter, for the warm welcome. Of course, it was quite easy to say yes to a lecture in Budapest, as I've been here when I was younger for several times, so it's a pleasure for me to be here. Before I show you some of our work, I would like to say some words about the work in general and about the office. So we are 3 partners at the moment, Brandlhuber plus Emde Burlon. The plus is kind of program because it says that we work together with different people for different projects, but also with different disciplines, so it doesn't have to be an architect always. As I said, we are 3 partners. We have about 5 people who collaborate the office, and that's quite a good size to work experimental, and we don't want to grow that big that we have to work for our collaborators and not for the projects. I have 4 projects, 3 which are realized and almost mentioned at the beginning, and one is just a project up to now, but we hope to start with construction soon. Altogether, these projects had to deal with existing structures from different times, and they all have the same, that they should be teared down and there should be something else at the place. And yeah, it's a wish of us to show that it's possible to transform every kind of existing structure, and that it's not good to tear down something, to build something new, and to tear down it in 30 years because it's not modern anymore. I would like to start with the gallery and studios at Brunnenstraße, because it was our first project in Berlin, and I think it's the most, or it shows how we think in the best way. It's dealing with a gap from the Second World War. You see the site is located quite central in Berlin. You see the East TV Tower, the Alexander Tower. When we look into the gap, the story went on. You see there are some structures already there. They result from a bad investment in the mid-90s. Typical situation for Berlin. Maybe you know, because it's maybe similar to here. So investors came to Berlin, but due to the fact that the wall just came down, there was a lot of space. You couldn't really start a project with a lot of money. So he runs out of money, and what stood there was the whole basement. You can see here, there's the complete basement. Then we had two-thirds of the ceiling of the street level, and even the elevator was built up to the street level. You see it in a bad condition and in a cleaned situation. Then the story went on in I think in the early 2000s. A new owner came and bought the whole site, but he was just interested in that brick building on the courtyard and in that situation. And this was in a quite bad shape. I show you in the next slide. And but he had to buy the whole site, because there are all the medias which go to the courtyard house, and also the right to use that path he wants to keep. That's why he bought the whole site. But actually he wanted to sell the street part. And he wanted to sell it because he saw that it's looking bad, it's looking maybe ugly, but the good thing about this is that you have water in the basement, so you know that the construction is safe and it's quite a good base to go on with building. But for him it was clear that he needed to tear down that, and so he was not interested in that. And yeah, when we bought the site, we decided to use that existing structure and to go on with that, which means that you have to accept certain things. Like I said, the elevator was already there you have the structural accesses and so on. The second thing, when Arno Brandlhuber bought the site, the street site, so it's a kind of case study project, I like to say that. There was a sketch which was given to the contract, and this is the sketch. This sketch shows the situation in a section and in a floor plan or site plan. You have the Brunnenstraße, we just looked down. You have the building on the opposite side of the street. You have the new volume or the new house which should follow the existing, and you have the courtyard situation with the brick building here. And the owner of the site just wanted to sell the part to the street when it's guaranteed that he still has a good lighting situation for the courtyard building. And therefore we drew a line from the roof of the opposite building to the window in the first floor of the brick building. And this was how the volume should cut in general. And of course we need some exceptions, and they were written down here, very precise in the contract. And this was that the elevator needs to have more height in the last level. A tree could be planted. You need some pipes for ventilation, and everything was written down very precise in that contract. And the interesting thing about these two facts, like following the existing and cutting the volume in general, you see like the exceptions work against this cutting of the volume, means that before you start to design, you even know how to start the building and how to finish the building. So it's, let's say, more or less already there. You see this kind of compromise. So we could have added a lot of more volume, but due to the fact that we follow the existing, what ended here, and due to the fact of the cutting of the volume, it's a kind of compromise between the neighbors. You see how it works. It even works better than we planned. It's a picture taken in late March, early April. You see that the trees are getting green, and you see that direct light is even going to the floor of the courtyard. And these are the exceptions of the roof. Here also you see that we don't build up the whole volume. You see the tree, it's a Japanese cherry, and you see all the ventilation things and so on. So when we had the start of the building and the end of the building, we need the in-between, so the ceilings. And with the roof, we followed a rule in Berlin that we need to follow the roofs of the neighborhood buildings. But unfortunately, they were not on the same height. So what we did, we compensated them in a step. That's exactly here. And by doing that, we thought, okay, why not taking that rule and also making the ceilings like that? So what we did, we followed the ceilings of the neighborhood buildings and brought them together in a step. And the step is going from one side to the other of the tunnel. And by this very simple parameter, you get a quite complex situation, as you have a kind of zoning of the floor plans, and you also, as a result, you get structural beams in these situations, which helped us to support the courtyard additions I show you later. So here the situation in the section again, you see we don't use the complete volume due to the fact that we follow the existing, which ended here. And you see the cutting of the building. Maybe I should tell you the function we would like to establish. We have a gallery in the basement, ground floor and first floor. Our office is sitting in the second floor. And we have a flat in the third and in the fourth floor, which forming kind of maisonette due to fire regulations. And now we needed an escape way. And of course it's usually you put it into the volume. But we had this leftover of the missing volume, and that's why we pushed out the staircase to that volume. We have a distance from 5 meters to the facade. It comes from fire regulations, you see it here. So in case there's a fire, let's say in that floor, you're still saved, you can still escape safe from the upper floors. And by pushing out these staircases, we also served some terraces for public spaces for the different levels. You also see that we have a small part of landscape planning, and it's shaped in a very strange way, and it also goes back to a rule. Because we have to serve a second escape way, and usually it's served by the street side, and it's possible to rescue you through a window. So the fire workers come with their car, put the ladder to the facade, and rescue you from the window. The problem was in that street is the tram, you say tram? So with the electricity cables, and of course it's not working well together, so ladder of the fire workers and electricity cable. So that's why they need to go with their ladder to the courtyard and rescue you on the courtyard facade. And there were 2 points they need to reach. They were more or less on that level, one on that side and one on that side. And the maximum length of the ladder of the fire workers is 8 meters 6. But unfortunately, our zero level had a higher distance to that windows they need to reach. It was more. So that's why we raised the zero level to this maximum length. And of course, it differs for 36 centimeters due to the fact we had that step in the ceilings. So you see, everything is a kind of trying to design itself by setting parameters or taking rules and play with that. And the result is very positive. So we have an exterior staircase because I mentioned if you put it into the volume, into the building, then of course you have fewer space to rent. You always need to connect it to the facade, which is bad for the open plan or for the floor plan. And it's really a communicative space, as you can see here. It's the opening of an exhibition in the gallery, and you see it's quite good used by the people. And yeah, it differs from this interior staircases where you go by and say hello, and then so it's much more about communication. And of course, it's also kind of transition space between public and private, because it's a private construction, but everybody is invited to go up the construction. The facade is looking like that. Brunnenstraße is a quite rough place, or used to be a quite rough place at the time. So we tried to use a very cheap material and more or less which is a little bit close to the street. We used polycarbonate. It was a new invention at the time, not in general, but it consists of 9 chambers of air, which has a really good insulation. It's not so good for acoustics because it's no weight, it's very lightweight. And we have one big window for every floor to the Brunnenstraße. Only the client got 2. And there's also a parameter for the size of the windows. Because maybe you know when you design, you think about how big, where to put it to. And it's just about the weight of the glass. So you have this, I don't know how you call it, the thing which can lift the glass with this 6, I don't know, things where you put it to. And this carries 500 kilogram. So you have the height of the floor and by the weight you get the width of the window. So it's quite easy parameter to get the maximum of light. The polycarbonate is translucent, and you see how it works during the day that the inside is coming outside, so you see the support structure during the night. What I said about the transition space from public to private, we also wanted to serve on the street level. We have the tunnel, which connects the courtyard to the street. But we also left this ceiling. If you remember the picture right at the beginning, there was 1/3 who was missing from this existing ceiling. So we left it. We don't build it because the gallery was quite. Of course they would like to play with this double-story space. So it's possible to look from the street into the basement and from the basement to the street. And here we have a huge wooden door. Actually was thought to bring in art, so bigger art pieces. It was immediately taken by these guys who glue their posters about parties and concerts on that, which doesn't matter, but a result is that if you want to open today the gate, then you need to cut between the two wings. So like at the, I don't know if you know this Litfaßsäule, this rounded thing with the advertisements. And then you can open the door, which usually is done during the warmer times of the year. Here you can see how it works. You see that people even put their bikes in. It's just a concrete structure, so they cannot, I don't know, damage anything. And you see the situation with the missing ceiling, so that you can have a look into the gallery and from the gallery to the street. So in the next slide, I will show you I will talk about the material of the building, but the idea was in general just to build a shell or a core construction. And so we did that. We wanted to keep it flexible in a way. And this is down in the gallery. So we are here. This is the double-story space, and you see these dots there. So if you imagine the gallery would go out of the basement, what function you could have in that basement, and therefore we thought maybe it would be good in the future to add this missing ceiling. And so it's quite easy. You just put in reinforcement here, put the framework in, and then you can have this missing ceiling there. And if you do that, of course, you just build a concrete structure, you need to think about all the things you need later on. That's why we have the elevator already there. Of course, the door is not working now. And we have all the electricity already there, like in every other floor. What we did here with the missing ceiling, we also did on the other side, so that there's a kind of continuum for the gallery. Another interesting thing is that's the existing elevator. That is how we went on building. And there's you see, it doesn't really fit. And it's just because of standards. So, I don't know, between 95 and 2008, there seems to be a new standard in covering reinforcement. As I said, we just built a concrete shelf, and the idea behind that is that it's still typical for Berlin that we have the situation that projects usually start with low money. Maybe you know the slogan "poor but sexy," what you said about Berlin. And so the situation was during the 90s and during the 2000s that you rent, buy, or whatever a space, and then you take out everything what is not connected to the core of the building. So you take out flooring, you take out hanging ceilings, you take down plaster, And then usually your money was almost empty. Then you put in a pipe for water and plumbing, and then you run a bar, and that's it. That was the project. And the idea was, okay, if there is a demand for rough spaces, so with no interiors, why not build a building without interiors? And that's exactly what we did. The only thing we gave a better shape is the ceiling. The ceiling is smoothened. It's a kind of machine that fine sediments are coming up, and then the surface is quite robust for use. So it is just providing rough spaces with no interiors. It's possible to have all the interior you want to have. So you can have a different flooring, you can have plaster. You just need to bring it back to that condition when you go out to space. That's a picture of the office. In the second floor, you see these transition space of the staircase and of the terrace, and usually during warmer times, the building can open up half the facade to the courtyard. That's a picture or two pictures from the maisonette right on top. They are the only furniture we did in concrete, so we thought in the shell construction. It's the kitchen down there, and it's a kind of backpack for the heating system, just for the simple fact that you don't need to bring the pipe through the whole building. So we just put the heating system below the roof. Next project is the conversion of St. Agnes, Peter already mentioned. So we have to go back to the 60s. The whole complex was built by that guy, Werner Düttmann. And I show him because he's really an interesting person, because he was running his private practice but also was serving the public because he was building senator in the 60s. So he was serving both sides, let's say. And that's an aspect Rem Koolhaas or OMA mentioned in their, I think, 2012 at the Venice Biennale with their exhibition Civil Servants, because they were dealing exactly with these kind of persons who were dealing as well the public and the private. And yeah, if you look at the situation today, you even need a lawyer when you go with your designs to the government. No, it's a completely different way. And he built that building 64 to 67. It's the Catholic Church St. Agnes, and it's yeah, it's called brutalism. So it's one of the most significant buildings we have in Berlin, and I think in Germany from that period. And it's quite interesting how Düttmann deals with all these kind of functions and with the mass of the building. It's a typical complex from the parallel or after the Second Vatican Council, where not only the church was in the center, but also all the people who served the church. And that's why we have this kind of complex, not only solitary church. Actually, it's situated right in the geographical center of Berlin. At the Alexandrinenstraße, you enter the complex from that side. You see it there also in a 3D axonometry. And he starts with a single-story building at the entrance. Then we have the community hall here, 2 stories. Then we have a 3-story part, which consists of the sacristy and living and working areas for the people who work there. And finally, in the north, we have the church itself and the bell tower. And By doing that, he guarantees a good lighting situation for the courtyard, because high buildings in the north and lower ones in the south and in the east. Here you see a model. Everything is covered by a very rough plaster. Only some parts of it are like emphasized in concrete. Here, floor plan. As I said, we have different parts, or we had different functions in the whole complex, as the community hall, sacristy, and so on. And there was a kind of social body in that whole complex, and that's a really important aspect. Maybe you can keep it in mind when we talk about the conversion of the whole complex. And Düttmann even emphasized this public space by bringing a path which is going through the whole complex, serving the courtyard. And you see it's covered with these huge stone plates, what you usually use on pedestrians. So it's still emphasizing this public way. All the functions were served by the courtyard, so all the entrances are connected to the courtyard, so that's the core element of the whole complex. Then we have to make a step from the 60s to the 2000s. At the beginning, I think 2003, the Catholic Church of Berlin got into a really bad financial crisis. Bad means that they had to close almost half of their churches, which means a number 100. And St. Agnes was one of that. And you see how it ended. So you see water came down in the main nave and the whole wooden floor was nearly destroyed. And I think an interesting thing is that it's of course a pre-war, so modernistic building. And there were 3 communities which were connected and which went to a new church. And so 3 churches were empty. The 2 other churches were Neo-Romantic and Neo-Gothic. They got a future function, and St. Agnes did not, which is quite interesting in the case we deal with certain kind of buildings, because we have, I don't know, we like history or the past. And so the church wanted to tear down the buildings, and then there was a quite bad, but also all the bad things also have like good aspects. In the south of Berlin, a church was destroyed, I think built in the 40s by Rudolf Schwarz, another important architect for churches. But more from the western part of Germany, and it was his only building in Berlin. And that church was teared down to make space or place for a supermarket, which never happened. So very sad story. But that put the monument gremium on, I don't know, brought them on the plan, and they immediately put 8 churches or 8 complexes which were built after the war to the heritage list. And one of that was St. Agnes, and so the plan to tear it down was not possible anymore. Then they wanted to sell the space or the buildings. And we heard of that because we like focus on these things. And we talked to 2 gallerists if it could be interesting to them to converse this complex. And one of them was Johann König, very young, but yeah, very progressive gallerist. And he was immediately taken by the idea. And the contract he made with the church is that he rents the site for 99 years, which is quite a distance for us. And he can do on the site everything he wants to do. He even could tear down the buildings if they are not protected. And after 99 years, you have to talk again about the contract, and usually you can like have another 99 years. And I think that's quite a good model because Berlin sold a lot of very good lots in the recent past, and so you don't have influence on future development of these things. No? So I think the model to rent or to give somebody the space for rent is much better. And of course you don't have this financial pressure because the rent is quite low. You see how they try to deal with the damages. Here, example in the roof. So the water goes down on the profile where it should go originally. And it's quite funny because it remembers more on contemporary art than, so maybe on the future use, than on helping that complex. Again, a picture, and now I would like to focus again on that aspect. So the first thing we thought about when we thought about conversion of St. Agnes was to keep that kind of publicity in that complex. And yeah, we had dialogues with the gallerist. Of course, we wanted to have as much space as he can have because he has a big storage space and also a quite good working gallery. And we convinced him just to put the gallery into the church space. And we have today a small cafe here. These are the editors of 032C magazine. It's a, I don't know, maybe you know, a lifestyle magazine. In the former community hall, we have today an architectural practice, Robert Neun, also a young office from Berlin. Then in the former sacristy, we have an editor of, a small editor of very exclusive art books. On top, so in the first and second level, we have working and living for the gallerist and for another couple, so like it was before. And in the church we have the gallery. The second aspect was, of course, the heritage status. And the heritage status focused on the facade. So we were not allowed to change anything on the facade except it has to deal with fire regulations, because fire regulations are above heritage regulations. It's also an interesting step. And the other thing was they were, of course, focused on the main nave, or let's say on the church space. But at the same time, of course, that's the problem for the gallerist. The good thing about the modern churches is that when you take out the social body of the church, you have a really complete empty space, what is maybe even hard to say what it's dedicated to, except it's quite high. So even the Jesus at the cross was hanging on 2 ropes from the ceiling, so nothing was connected to the building. When you see this is the emptied space, the 2 things which are really bad for a gallerist are the proportions, because it's dedicated, of course, to God and not to art, and the side naves and the situation in the ground floor, because it's quite hard to hang huge pictures or whatever in that space. At the same time, by this by this monument status, it was obvious that we could just make a very minimal intervention to convince them somehow to renew or to converse the church space. So what we did is we put in a huge table. You see it here. So let's say it's a new ceiling, a new level, and it has a lot of legs. I'll soon show you why we have that much legs. You see it here in the section, and we go to the other section. The level is put on the former organ emperor, so it follows this line, and it has, as you saw in the axonometry, a lot of legs in the former structural axis, and it has that much legs that we don't need to go into the foundations of the church. So there's a steel plate below every column, and that spreads the loads. The other thing is that the table has a gap to the existing. It's quite hard to see because it has to do with standard, I told you later. But we follow in detail the detail of Werner Düttmann, who did the same at the organ emperor. And by doing that, so argumenting that we put in a furniture which is not connected to the existing structure, that was the convincing argument for the heritage gremium to follow that intervention. And so from the program of the client, we have the gallery space itself on top, which has now much better proportions. And we have all the service program below the table. Here we have a picture from the opening exhibition. You see the proportions are much better than before. The artist is Katharina Grosse. She's producing these huge paintings, and she's even playing with these proportions, because if you imagine these people wouldn't be there, it's hard to say how big the space is in real. This is Camille Henrot. She has the space and space concept, so she puts in the driveway construction. You see there's a distance to the existing. You can walk all around, so she's going away from that walls, because for some artists it's quite hard to deal with this plastered walls. And another installation of Tatiana Trouvé. Also the ceiling is originally, we just connected some new lighting. Maybe with this picture, some words to the walls. These walls are 6 centimeters thick, 6. And it's made out of vertical and horizontal steel, and then it's plastered with concrete. And Düttmann did it for acoustic reasons, because they can react. So it's a very good acoustic situation in that building. And behind this 6 centimeter wall, we have 80 centimeters of air, and then we have the structural walls. And the distance of 80 centimeters was for the fact of heating. So in case the community came on Sunday, they put in warm air, and then these walls were heating the space very quickly up, and then of course the temperature is also going down very quickly. So that was not a problem for the function of a church, but of course for galleries, because it's open almost every day. So therefore we cut that, we don't use it anymore. We brought in everything what is serving the gallery in the table, so the heating is in the table. And also all the medias, electricity and so on, you need to run the gallery is possible to go by a certain grid to bring up to the surface of the desk. So now you can see the gap. This is the gap of Werner Düttmann, so it's the end of the organ emperor. It's 12 to 15 centimeters. This is the new gap between the existing and the table, and it's 4 centimeters. So you can see from the 60s to now, we have 8 to 11 centimeters of standard. Another look below the table. You see there are these points where you can bring up all the media. I think that's it. Next project, Anti-Villa, another time, another country even. We have go back to the 80s and to the former GDR. So this was, St. Agnes was in the former western part. The situation is, it's a small village in the western part of Berlin. And the site is connected to that path or that street. And that belongs to nowadays to the official, how do you say, path when you want to follow the former wall. So it's former border area. And we are dealing with these two, or actually with that building, but these two buildings belong together. You see they are a little bit bigger than the surroundings. We have on the one side this wood consisting of oaks. The site is also connected to the lake. And these are the two buildings. So we have the site plan again, the Rotkirchenweg, this is this wallway. And we have these two existing buildings. Here it's connected to the lake. And these buildings belong to a small factory, and that was part of a more huge factory in the north of Berlin, 2 hours in the north. A huge building which produces fabrics. And this building is the factory itself. It's built in the mid-50s, a very good structure. And this building is a very low-cost building. It's a storage building which follows in the mid-80s. And we are dealing exactly with that building. As I said, it's a very simple construction. It's made out of bricks and then plastered with this typical plaster from the former GDR. In the ground floor, we have huge openings to handle this, to bring in the fabrics and all the things with delivery and so on. And in the upper floor, we have a lot of small windows, which serves all the convenience and offices and so on. And a neighbor told us that it was built by a troupe of bricklayers who were educated, and it said that every part of this bricklayer team had to make one of these windows. That's why it has this much, which is quite a nice story. The house is covered, or was covered, with a very nice construction, a very lightweight construction with these wooden triangle beams. Just simple wood nailed together, so very simple. And everything was covered with asbestos or asbest. And these were the two reasons why we couldn't keep the roof. So it was too lightweight. Our structural engineer had even problems to serve the structure to snow. And of course it's the asbestos you don't want to have, because it's said that it causes health problems. This is a view from the top. So you see it's connected to that lake. You see also the surroundings, which are much smaller buildings. And that was the main problem with these buildings. Both buildings consist of about 500 square meters of space. And if you would have teared down that buildings, which was planned by the former owner, you would have been allowed to rebuild for that particular building one single-story building with, let's say, 150 square meters. So our task was to keep these 500 square meters at a lake, which is perfect. But of course, as a lot of space costs a lot of money, our idea was to deal in a very simple way with the building to make it happen to keep 500 square meters in that situation. What we did is in the ground floor we almost changed nothing. The structure stays. There were 3 units dedicated to these former functions, and we kept that. These 2 units got a small bathroom and the option for a kitchen. The former interior staircase is changed to an exterior staircase to make the upper floor independent from the rest of the building. As I said, we took down the... It's quite funny. As I said, we took down the roof. We were also able to take away the central wall, which brought us in the possibility to have an open space. And we introduced a new concrete core. This concrete core serves an oven or chimney, a sauna, which makes sense at a lake, of course, a small bathroom, the kitchen, and a staircase which is going up to the roof. Of course, not an official staircase, because in the surroundings there are no roof terraces. And then finally we have the roof. The roof is just a flat plate. It has 2 percentage so it's sloped for 2 percentages over the diagonal, just for draining the whole space, and then the water is brought down in the spout. Here you see it in a section. In the existing building we had a kind of ring or beam which was going around the whole building, but that was not enough to serve the new roof. That's why we introduced a new beam, and this beam results in that sloped roof just by making it in different heights. You can see it here. And this beam, and we come to that point, brought the possibility to have bigger openings in the upper floor, as we were very satisfied with the openings in the ground floor. By the way, 4 pictures of a typical model. In that case, the concrete core with the kitchen and the staircase. Usually we served it to the craftsmen that it's easier to understand what we want to have. Before and after the conversion, so you see the flat sloped roof, and now we think we have to talk about the openings in the upper floor. And these openings are very much inspired by that film, Tamrock. But of course you can also connect them to other things like the conical intersects of Gordon Matta Clark, for example in Paris, or also Lina Bobardi, who did that in Sao Paulo. And the film is about that guy. He's working in a factory, and he got sick of the all-day life, and then he's going home, and then he fills up his door with a brick wall, and then he takes a huge hammer and opens up his small window of the kitchen to a much bigger opening, as you can see here in the final stadium. This goes over, or the strategy is copied in the whole area, and this to fulfill this demand of light and to break out of these, of the walls of the small windows, that was very much inspiring us to do it in a kind of that way. We tried it then in a model, and then of course the question was, okay, how to realize this idea. And of course it would have been quite hard to go to the concrete worker or to the bricklayer or whatever and say, we want to have a kind of bigger hole, like so or so, I don't know. And that's why we decided to do it on our own. We had a Gulaschkanone, and we had some drinks and so on, and we invited friends to join for this action. And it took place actually a day. We finished all the 4 openings in one day. And then we started. You see, we not only had analog hammers, but also electric support. We also had the Richtfest, so when we finish a I don't know, the core or shell construction, then we usually make a small party to say thanks to the craftsmen so far. And that's the result. You see the only thing what was given is that the structural engineer drew 3 lines per window, and in that field we could like maximize the light. And of course it's quite easy to decide where to open up the house. We did it to this, that's why I mentioned it at the beginning, to this oak wood on the one side, and of course to the lake on the other side. So to the neighbors we kept these small windows because you don't want to open up that much to your neighbors. So that's how it appears today. You see the exterior or the change of the interior stairs to an independent staircase to the upper floor. The whole building is today covered with kind of very thin plaster, which shows all the signs the building got from the history. So here, for example, was a sliding door connected. You see the points where the fire ladder was connected and so on. You see the sloped roof and the drainage. That's a picture of the other side. You see we kept these openings like they were. These are the openings to the oaks. A few to the interiors. As we kept all the damages of the plaster on the exterior, we also kept all the plaster on the inside. You see the kitchen and the staircase serving the roof. And you see the view to the oaks. You see it's quite nice to have this kind of green tapestry as a background. And a view to the lake. Of course so maybe a small excursion to the construction. Of course we thought about filling this up with a simple glass, which was not possible, so filling up the form exactly with glass is too expensive. Just glue it to the back of the wall is not possible due to physical things. So we just made a frame and put it against the wall. I think that's the final picture for that project. And now the last project, San Gimignano Lichtenberg, which is still just a project. It's not in progress, but you see it's almost finished. And it starts with that band. These are the einstürzenden Neubauten. So maybe you would say collapsing contemporary architecture, which is quite a competition for us now. And the interesting fact is that the stage of them is not looking like a stage, but more like a construction site. And they gave a concert, their only concert in the former East, in a special building, and that's connected to our project. So you see a picture, there's also a DVD about the concert. And they did it in that building. It's not the whole building, there are already parts who were teared down. It's a huge factory for graphite. And so it was one of the huge factories in the former GDR, so VEB, maybe you know. And the whole complex was teared down in the beginning of the 2000s, except these 2 towers. You see them marked here, and you see them in a further stage much better. And these 2 towers could not be teared down, just for the simple fact that they consist of 50 centimeters of concrete walls and in really good quality. But of course, for the government, it's just ugly. No, they just want to tear it down somehow. And the 2 towers consists a silo in that one, and it's a staircase tower in that one, which always has connected small units of, let's say, 40 square meters per level. You see them here, and yeah, one of these pictures gave them the project. San Gimignano Lichtenberg. We call it San Gimignano because maybe you know these towers in the Toscana, especially in San Gimignano. There are a lot of them, and these towers have no function. They just show the wealth of the family, and that's exactly what happened here. They have no function, and so we published the project in a way. There are already a lot of people going there to see that, so it's quite similar situation. We bought the tower together with 3 other guys, and we deal with that tower, so with the silo tower, which is much more hard to converse. Here's, yeah, okay. I think it's self-explaining now. And the good thing about the tower is that it's very solid, as I said. It has doors, openings, even a balcony, and it has a roof, so it's almost finished. Also, there were some projections on the wall. So here we have a section which corresponds with the picture. You see, these are the 4 silos where the graphite was stored and then was putting onto lorries. And we have a staircase which goes up all the way. Our idea is to use this space and this space. It has the advantage that this staircase is just connected to one unit, which is important for fire regulations, because if 2 units are connected, then the staircase needs to be in a different shape. So now about the function. The idea was to establish our architectural office there, so to move from where we are now to that place. It's much more quiet, so it should be industrial surrounding. But that's the problem. The government says an architectural office doesn't produce anything. It's quite interesting. So I don't know, we just work with our brain or whatever. So that's why, so we are not a producing thing, which they think it's in the surrounding, but actually Berlin doesn't have a certain kind of producing industry anymore. That's why we gave it another name. We now try to install a one-to-one prototype production, which means that we make parts of architecture one-to-one. And of course, you need to serve this production with an architectural office. As I said, the lighting situation for these 2 units is quite well because of the existing openings. Only this part is quite hot because there are no openings for light. And due to the fact that these are 50 centimeters of concrete, it was quite easy to decide that we just can drill holes into that wall, because that's not so expensive like to saw out windows, and it would make no sense with 50 centimeters of concrete. And now the question was where to put these openings. And I don't know, we sat together, and then one of our team said, he has a rifle, an air rifle, and he could bring it, and maybe we shoot the holes into the wall. And that's what you see here. We had a model, and in the unit there were 2 lines, and the 2 lines have the height of when you are sitting there on your eyes, and 1 line when you're standing there. And everybody of the team had 1 shoot. And it worked out quite well, so everybody was meeting the model. And yeah, here you see it as a scheme, how the openings will be there, but they really will drill it like we did it in the shooting. And yeah, we hopefully we will have a permission from the government after 2 years of, let's say, positive dialogue. Yeah, and we hopefully we can start with construction. And with the view from the top of the tower, I would like to finish my presentation. Thank you.